Good evening, everyone. If I can have your attention, please. Have a seat if you want one. Keep grabbing food. Don't hesitate to eat and drink. Nancy will be happy to serve you here. Don't be shy. You can keep the merriment going while we have a short program as part of this. But sit if you're comfortable, stand if you're comfortable, keep on eating. My name's Dan Terrace. I'm director of the International Center for Ethics, Justice, and Public Life, and welcome and thank you for being here to help us celebrate 20 years here at Brandeis University. Thank you. When we started when we started working on the center, we were in literally Ford Hall. That's where our offices originally were. We migrated from Ford Hall to some, which has since been replaced by the Shapiro Campus Center, to some cottages over by what's now the Ridgewood Dorms. Those cottages have also disappeared. We seem to leave a trail of destroyed buildings in our wake. We moved from there to Usedan for a couple of years. Usedan is still standing, so we're not a permanent curse. And then moved from there into here in the Abraham Shapiro Academic Complex. So it's been, a really exciting 20 years to build and be part of this institution. I think as I think back, what's proudest for me is that I really feel that the center has been a genuine collective effort. It's really been a community effort with folks from the Brandeis community, students, faculty, staff colleagues, senior administrators, and then our extended family around the Boston area and around the world. Too late, I thought of the idea of creating a world map with pins of where all the people who have been involved in our programs have been or worked, our Sorensen Fellows and the dozens of countries where they've been placed over the course of the summer, our international judges and the various countries that they represent before they come to our meetings, our incredible network of artists and peace builders who are working on the nexus of using creativity to help build bridges in divided societies, also from all over the world. And now more recently, our ENACT program with elements in 29 states now around the country and getting to 50 by 2019 or 2020. And so thank you. If we had a map to show where all of you were from and where all of our constituents are from, David, this may be something to work on for our 25th. To kind of illustrate. But to me, what's most important is the sense of community, everything that all of you and so many others have done to help build this center. It's really been a genuine collective effort about building bridges between academic life and the life outside, about using knowledge to make a real-world impact at the community level, at the state level, at the national level, at the international level. And in that sense, it's an extension of what so many of us do in so many ways here at Brandeis University and beyond. So a thanks to all of you for your contributions to building this center over the last 20 years, and I hope you'll keep working with us to build it in the many years to come. We have a short program tonight. I could point around the room to so many of you who could talk about the work that you've done with the center and the ways in which you've been involved. We have just a couple of speakers who will talk a bit about the center, and we have another couple of little special elements before we go on to our incredible performance tonight at 7 o'clock in the Mandel Atrium. As I say, keep eating to fuel yourself up for our performance that will go for the evening. The center, as I think many of you may know, was originally founded with a very generous gift from a man named Abraham Feinberg, who was an early chair of the Brandeis Board of Trustees back in the late 50s and early 1960s. We're really lucky that Abe, who passed away shortly after the center was founded, his family's tradition has continued on. His daughter Judy has been a board member of the center, and his son-in-law Norbert Weisberg also has served as a board member. Norbert was scheduled to speak tonight and say a little bit about Abe Feinberg. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here at the last minute. But he did send me his remarks, which I'd like to read to give you a sense of the very early history of the center and the man whose gift got it going. So this is called Abe Feinberg by Norbert Weisberg, and the Judy is his wife Judy Schneider, Abe's daughter. It's hard for Judy and me to believe that 20 years have passed since Abe Feinberg's passing and his endowment of the Center for Ethics, Justice, and Public Life at Brandeis. Abe was an early financial supporter of Brandeis and ultimately chairman of its board. During his lifetime, he was involved in a number of activities which in hindsight were of enormous consequence, taking him into the highest circles of world power. He met with presidents like Truman, Kennedy, and Johnson, sometimes weekly, but was ever a very secretive man, never discussing his contacts, never gossiping, never sharing insights with his family. Indeed, he abjured even being photographed with his colleagues, fearing that such would raise a suspicion of celebrity seeking on his part. Over the years, we have been approached by a number of academicians who found Abe's name among attendees at consequential meetings around the world, but are left puzzled by the absence of any explanation of Abe's role. He was an early Zelig, an eminence grise of major influence in U.S. and Israeli affairs, but a sojourner who left no footprints. And I should say that although there was discussion and Abe made a very generous contribution to the center, he didn't want his own name on it. It was just the kind of man he was. He just felt that the center should not memorialize him as a person, and so this is consistent with Norbert's remarks. So Norbert continues, let me add some color to the otherwise gray background Abe left behind him. He started his involvement in world fairs in 1945 by visiting DP camps in Europe holding Holocaust survivors. There, at his own expense, he managed to charter several ships to carry displaced persons from Italian ports to Palestine. Through his support for the establishment of the State of Israel, he became intimate with Ben-Gurion, Weizmann, and other founders of the nation who frequently met in Abe's U.S. home to discuss strategy vis-a-vis the Truman administration. After the founding of Israel, he was active among a small circle of individuals around Truman in persuading the then president to recognize the new state against the advice from the State Department. Later, in 1948, he helped fund Truman's train trip through the Midwest, the most famous whistle-stop tour by any president. He remained active in Democratic Party politics and support for the State of Israel throughout his long life. An imposing man at 6'4", with a reputation of, quote, taking no prisoners, end quote, and I refer you to the portrait of Abe Feinberg in the Board of Trustees room, right behind where the president often sits, if you get a sense of Abe's take no prisoners personality. Abe was a very successful businessman, chair of a New York Stock Exchange company who might easily have rested on his laurels. Perhaps his most honored memory lies in the fact that he never took public credit for any of his achievements. It's what makes me most proud of Abe. I hope this glimpse of those achievements allows you to understand better the man whose support helped create the Brandeis International Center for Ethics, Justice, and Public Life, and the aspirations for that institution that he harbored. So thanks to Abe Feinberg and his family, because Judith Schneider and Norbert Weisberg have continued Abe's generous tradition of support in helping us get started the advocacy for policy change and later the ENACT program, and so that family's strong support has really helped keep the center going. Okay, thank you. With that, I'd like to turn to someone who also has been with the center since the very beginning, since before we actually started, who joined our advisory board at its very first meeting and has been a member of our advisory board ever since, has served as its chair for a number of years, and also been the leader of our Brandeis Institute for International Judges, the renowned South African judge and prosecutor. Please join me in welcoming Judge Richard Goldstone.
Thank you very much, Dan. I cannot help at the start to recall, I can't help but recall how I came to be involved with Brandeis. it's all to the credit of the humanist chaplain at Harvard University. About 20 years ago, it would have been, I was invited to deliver the annual Lincoln Lecture at Harvard University. It was a bit of a come down because I assumed that the lecture was named after Abraham Lincoln. But when I arrived, I was told it was named after the first humanist chaplain who had died about 15 years before. But in any event, the then humanist chaplain, with unusual chutzpah, sent an email to the presidents of all the Boston universities telling them that I was available to give a talk at their university. I had no idea. He hadn't warned me at all. Fortunately, all of them found this to be refusable, except for one. And that was Yehuda Reinhardt of Brandeis, who invited me to come and give a talk on the campus. And he gave me a very friendly welcome. He introduced me. I gave my talk, and over coffee after my talk, he said, "I have one invitation for you and one request." He said, "The invitation is to join the board of our very new Center for Ethics, Justice, and Public Life." And that was easy. I said, "Thank you very much, I'd love to." And he added, of course, that the first chairman was Ted Sorensen, which made it a very easy invitation to accept. The request was to put some pressure on Archbishop Desmond Tutu to accept an honorary degree from Brandeis. And I'm happy to say that I was successful in putting pressure on Desmond Tutu, and he in due course received the honorary degree. It was a great privilege to be on the committee under the chairmanship of Ted Sorensen. He was really one of the outstanding people I've been privileged in my life to get to know and to befriend. The words of Ted I'll never forget, and they came back to mind when people were talking about the present administration in Washington, D.C. At that time, Ted attended a session of the Brandeis Institute for International Justice in Salzburg, at the Salzburg Global Seminar. And I remember Ted's opening words to his welcoming address. Ted had then recently suffered from a stroke which left him almost without sight. And Ted's opening words were, he said, "I may have lost my sight, but I haven't lost my vision." And he went on to talk about his vision for the United States. In any event, since my first board meeting under Ted's chairmanship, it's been a great pleasure. I said to somebody earlier today that the board on which I've got most pleasure and most interest and most satisfaction has been this one. It really has, under the direction of its founding and still director Dan Terrace, who's given it wonderful leadership and wonderful direction. It's also been a great pleasure and privilege for me to become a friend of Dan and Maggie and their family. It continues in the same way, and let me conclude by referring to the tremendous influence that this center has had on life in the United States and abroad. Through the Institute for International Judges, Brandeis has become a well-known word in the chambers of judges in many countries around the world. The BIIJs, as we call them, have attracted judges from many international and transnational courts, and almost from the beginning have benefited from the wonderful input from Lee Swigert, who has given it her very best, and that's something. Lee, really, you have given it wonderful direction, and will continue to do so. But in many other areas, in the peace building in the arts, has also become a national and international gem. Cindy Cohn has earned a well-deserved reputation in the United States and in many countries outside the United States. Dan has referred to the ENACT program, which is growing and giving students at this and other now 15 universities the opportunity of working in state houses and getting involved with the drafting of legislation. So it really is an unusual center for a middle-sized, medium-sized university. The DICE program, which you, Marcy, have directed, and I know the influence you've had on so many generations of Brandeis students, you're going to be very much missed in the coming years, and certainly I wish you well in the years to come. So thank. So let me conclude really by thanking Brandeis for having given me the wonderful privilege and opportunity of serving on this board, of chairing it for a number of years, and certainly it gives me the greatest pleasure to hand over the chairmanship to my friend John Shattuck. I know he will follow in the footsteps certainly of Ted Sorensen in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richard. I'd now, again, so many at Brandeis have supported us. One person who supported us particularly strongly over the years was the Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, Marty Krause, my boss for a number of years. And Marty has come back, and if I can call her up to say a few words. Please join me in welcoming Marty.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you for asking me to come to speak at this really happy occasion. You think about 20 years, that's really a generation. And you try to imagine what each of us looked like 20 years ago when this center was just getting started. And you realize we've all grown, but the center has continued to grow too. And so in some ways, I feel like it's been a sort of partner in my adult life, and a wonderful partner it is. One of the things that was most challenging for me when I was provost was there were a number of institutes and centers around the university that were sort of functioned independently. They weren't necessarily connected to a specific department or to a specific school. And that included the Schuster Institute for Investigative Journalism, Dan Center, the Hadassah Brandeis Institute, a number of others. And Yehuda, one of his first tasks, he said, I want you to get the center directors together and manage them. And I thought, what? Because I looked at the directors of these centers. They're the most entrepreneurial, out there, creative characters on campus. How do you manage? Why would you manage people that can do so much? But he kept pushing me and pushing me. So finally I got everybody together. And I have to say, I ran a lot of meetings for 8 years. This was my favorite meeting, 8 o'clock in the morning, once a month. And it was like a smorgasbord of great ideas. And Dan was always, we didn't have a chair of the among that group other than me, but so Dan was really my secret weapon. Talk to Dan all the time about issues going on with the university, how should I handle them, things like that. And that's one of the things that I think I just wanted to emphasize here. Centers and institutes sometimes are very, very connected to the university in all kinds of ways, and other times they're kind of quiet partners. This institute was always active, entrepreneurial, ubiquitous in its activities across campus, always there. You have a program, someone from the Ethics Center is going to be there. And it's because they really embodied all the goals and the lifeblood of the university and gave back in so many important ways, particularly to students. I think you developed so many creative, intense opportunities for students that allowed them to travel across the world to do very important work, and then you would bring them back and they would have to take sort of a semi-course with you in which they had to reflect on what they had learned. It was a real course, okay, sorry. There's no such thing as a semi-course. But they took a course, they had to reflect on what they had learned and write an appropriate report. And that was the kind of follow-through that Dan brought to everything, to make sure that the lessons that could be learned from an activity sponsored by the center were in fact embedded within the program. So there was always this sort of sense of a completion and a completeness of the thinking and the thought that went into the various programs that you started. So it was always fascinating to me to see how Dan managed to motivate, identify, motivate, and then just continue to nurture so many undergraduates and graduate students here on the campus. The other thing that I think makes this particular center stand out so vibrantly on the campus is that it really has quite an interesting mission in terms of its international work, its ethics work, and its arts work. And it really provides a very fluid and very interdisciplinary, very kind of no boundaries view about what the world of ethics and how you express it culturally, you express it legally, you express it politically, you express it socially. It brings all of those various facets about the core of what an ethical life, what an ethical person has, and how that's expressed in various ways. And I think that's one reason that you mean so much to so many people on campus, because you've touched people all over the campus with the kind of programs that you have provided and the kinds of experiences that you've made available to people. It's one of the most generous centers on campus, and it wasn't because Abe was that generous at the beginning. I mean, you have worked very hard to raise the funds to be able to do the work that you've done. All of our center directors are scrappy because they're not really built into the university budget. So they have to raise their resources every year, and Dan was always one of the best and was able to do terrific things with it. But for those of you who this may be the only center you really know, you made a great choice. If you're only going to really get to know one, this is a great one to learn about. But just realize that the role of centers and institutes at the university is really important to the core mission. It makes us bigger. It makes us travel farther. It brings in new people. It's much more flexible to bring in people to work in a center on a project than it is to hire someone in a department to teach a course. You can do things in centers and institutes much more easily if you have a provost that supports it, right, Lisa? Another champion of centers and institutes. Than you can in other ways at the university. So they're really just a gem, a really important core part of the university. And I didn't know any of this 20 years ago. I only knew this once I started working with the Center Institute directors in 2003, and then Dan kind of took me under his wing and helped me along. So I owe you a tremendous debt of gratitude for all the ways that we worked together, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I remember when you moved into this building, I get kind of mushy when people get good physical space because I think it makes such a difference. And you had been nomadic around the university, so when you got this space, and in your very gentlemanly way, you made sure you got just the spaces that you needed and you're a good neighbor to everybody else. It was just exciting to see you finally get a place that really, that you deserved. Well, we all know who really made that happen, but you've been a great tenant here. So, on behalf of all of us who've benefited so much from the work that you've done, both within the center with the staff, amazing staff, and you personally, happy birthday. I hope I'm here for the next 20th anniversary. Enjoy. I think it's going to be a fabulous program later tonight. So, thanks again.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Richard, for those generous comments. As Marty mentioned, the first thing we did at the center was create a program for undergraduates, a fellowship program that sent students overseas. That program eventually became named the Sorensen Program after Ted Sorensen, whom Richard mentioned as our first board chair. That program has sent 121 students all around the world. And we're very, very proud of it. We're actually now retiring that program after 20 very successful years, and it will continue to live on through those students and their work and the ideas about student internships that we have kind of inspired around campus. But we have one last act for the Sorensen Fellow Program, and that is to reveal, each year we do a publication of the amazing essays that students do in the course, the fall course that Marty mentioned. And that publication, which they completed in the fall, or they completed the essays in the fall, is about to be revealed here tonight. And Marcy, if I can call you, Marcy has really been the engine behind the Sorensen Program for many years. We'll say more about her in a minute. But for now, the floor is yours about the Sorensen.
Engine, huh? Usually I like to claim matriarch. So the Sorensen Fellows, as you heard about the program, and you met one of the Sorensen Fellows, Leah Sussman, who is a panelist this afternoon. But there are a few more Sorensen Fellows in the audience, so would you folks just wave? We've got some Sorensen Fellows here. And I'd like to ask David Weinstein, my colleague who works so hard on this publication, to help me to reveal the, in the box, the publication of the 2017 Fellows. Yes, you may have one as a souvenir. Yes, this is the last publication, so it has my swan song that as I started to write this, and you'll read it in the publication, that it says, this started out as a report that was boring even to me and turned into a love letter. That these really are some remarkable students who have such creativity to use balloons for percussion instruments. Who knew? And as Dan said, this fellowship and the ideals that it represents, and Ted Sorensen, the name of JFK's speechwriter that these students have carried admirably into the world, continues on in their lives and in the work of the center itself and the ways that they have shaped our work. So thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Thank you, David. Help yourself to this fabulous publication, also available, as all the Sorensen publications are, online at the center's website. Okay, we have a new, a relatively new undergraduate minor that the center has created called Creativity, the Arts and Social Transformation under the leadership of Cindy Cohen. We have a new special resource now for CAST, and I'm going to let Marcelo Brosiner, a Sorensen Fellow and member of the class of 2018 in the CAST program, tell us about it for 1 minute.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see everyone here. First, really quickly, to all my fellow undergraduates, congratulations on a snow day tomorrow. And to anybody attending the board meeting, safe travels. It's going to be pretty hectic. So, yes, there is a new resource room available to students in the CAST and creative writing departments, and we are officially opening it today. So if you have a couple moments at some point before you leave the Ethics Center, if you go right through this door right here and up the stairs, it's the first room on your right. So you can just check it out. And the space is meant to be a place for students to work on really any creative projects that they have that they are at some point in the process of doing. There is very limited space on campus for that kind of creative work. So we are happy to have a new space for students to be able to really work out any part of the process in brainstorming or completing something. And I wanted to thank Liz Bradfield of the Creative Writing Department for her help in putting the room together, along with Kristen Parker at the Rose Art Museum, and Elaine Rubin for her generosity in making this room a possibility. So yeah, thank you once again, and feel free to check it out. And if you have any suggestions for what might be missing from the room or what it could benefit from, let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcelo, for your work on it. Please check out, if not tonight, anytime, the CAST resource room right at the end of this hallway upstairs. Many of you know that Marcy McPhee, our Director of Campus Programs, will be leaving us at the end of this semester after 30 years at Brandeis and for the entire history of the International Center for Ethics, Justice, and Public Life. A couple of words about her. First, from Sorensen Fellow, former Student Union President, Sneha Walia, class of 2015.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I have the tall order of saying a few words about Marcy's incredible impact to Brandeis in just a couple minutes, which could easily fill volumes and days because of just how much she's done. I kind of want to zero in on the impact that Marcy has had on me and so many other students, so many other alumni, that I think really comes through her ability, through Marcy, your ability, to truly see people. Any conversation you have with Marcy is incredibly valuable, and she makes that really clear to you. Marcy's never the kind of person who'd be, on the phone or distracted when she's having a conversation with someone. She fosters true connection, and I think that's been incredibly valuable to this institution and to really everyone she's worked with. And I have a couple anecdotes to share to kind of exemplify that. So I first met Marcy and kind of been aware of her work my freshman year at Brandeis, which was the first year that DICE Impact began. And what an incredible event. DICE Impact is so quintessentially Brandeis, a social justice festival at an institution founded on values of social justice and inclusion. And Marcy really took DICE Impact, I believe, to the next level by making it an organic partnership with students. This was not just an institution that was holding an event at this university. It was a true partnership with the student government, with student leaders, and I was able to observe from that year onward, Marcy giving just as much attention and love to small events that brought 5 people to the table as she did to major keynotes, which is really incredible. She really saw students, took their leadership on, and gave them a chance to play a leadership role in their university, which is incredible. As Dan mentioned, I was also a Sorensen Fellow in the summer of 2014. Part of that process was a lot of pre-internship work led by Marcy to really help us understand what it means. Well, I'm a little louder now. To really help us understand what it means to enact social justice in the community around us. And Marcy did a really great job bringing all of us out of our shells, really understanding our questions, our stories, and being vulnerable enough to share her own with us, which was exceptional. She made us feel heard, she made us feel valued, and she made us feel like we really could make an impact, however small, for that summer on whatever institution that she worked with. And I know I'm still close to several of my fellows, and we take those lessons with us. So ultimately, I think what Brandeis is going to miss most, what I know so many alumni miss most about Marcy, is really what she taught us and what we can bring into the rest of our lives. Certainly, there's the very self-evident legacies that Marcy will leave as she moves on to other things, such as the legacy of the Sorensen Fellowship, such as the incredible work of DICE Impact, which will, of course, continue. But I think with a lot more subtlety and a lot of heart, she leaves a group of alumni who have learned from her that social justice and ethical living comes from seeing other people, for valuing their stories, from forging true connections. I think that's a lesson that everyone should learn. I think that's a lesson that all parts of this institution could work on and do better on, and take a note from Marcy on how to really make people feel valued and important, and create generations of leaders that will continue to do that with others. So thank you, Marcy, for everything you've done for us.
Thank you, Sneha. And there are hundreds of other Brandeis students who could give a similar talk like that about Marcy. I want to say just a word or two about her personally. Like Gabe Feinberg, Marcy does not trumpet her own horn. She did not want a big party dedicated just to her, where we would have had many more of these speakers, but I can't resist saying a word about her. When I arrived at Brandeis myself in 1992, Marcy was the first person I met right outside the door to my office. At the time, she was a part-time administrative assistant and a full-time mom of 6. I knew absolutely nothing about what it meant to run a university division, which I was hired to do. Fortunately, Marcy was there to teach me how to do that job. And she kept teaching me over the years as she herself also grew into a whole series of new responsibilities until finally she's concluding her work at Brandeis as the director of campus programs, something she has done with verve and imagination and great dedication over the last years. You know, sometimes there are people, you hear it said in documents or in around where people say, oh, Brandeis doesn't have school spirit. I hear that every once in a while, and I think, boy, that just doesn't accord with what I think of Brandeis. Because when I think of school spirit at this university, I think of the work that Marcy has done. I think of the work happening in the Sorensen Fellows Retreat. I think of what she has created with the students at Dice Impact. I think of the Religious Pluralism Alliance with which she was so involved. I think of the many different communities in which the spirit of collective responsibility for the world and for the people of the world, the people of this community and the people of the world, with people brought together to solve those problems, that's Brandeis University school spirit in the deepest and most powerful way, and it's something that drives this university. So I really think of Marcy as one of those people who has done as much as anyone on this campus to create that spirit, and it really makes sense, right? A school, a university in the Jewish tradition, kind of empowered in this way by a feminist Mormon from the heart of Texas. That's Brandeis, and that's Marcy's spirit. So wherever she goes next, whether it's to Texas, to Ghana, to Panama, back to the Marshall Islands, the Brandeis spirit will travel with her, and it will also be flowing back to us over many years. Marcy, thank you so much for everything you have done for us and for our whole community. If I could ask you to come forward, Marcy and Lee. We do have a small gift to thank you for everything you have done.
So the question is, what do you give Marcy as a going away present? Maybe a gold watch or gold-plated given financial circumstances? Or a mug with all of our faces on it, or the logo? So we had to decide what we were going to do. So why don't you open this up? So what we did was go through the archives of events that Marcy has been involved in, and then we reached out to people across campus through all the programs that Marcy has been involved in and got personal testimonies from them. And we called this a tribute, a Brandeis tribute for Marcy. And I have to say, it was extremely moving to see the comments that people came back with, that you are so cherished and so appreciated, and you are by us, and you are by people who knew you through the Sorensen program, through your immigrant practicum, through the board, and through Dice Impact, and everything else you did. So we hope that you will have that book, and it will be something you can look at again and again and remember all of us as we will remember you.
Thank you. We got 30 seconds before we got to get over there for the performance, and Marcelo is performing. But let me just grab the mic and correct the record that I've actually only been at Brandeis for 29 and a half years. And it bothers me as much that I couldn't make it till September 18th, as it's always bothered me to be 5'11". Just could not get that last inch. But what a remarkable group of folks here in this room and in many other corners of the university and in the world, and especially these remarkable colleagues that I've had the honor of working with. And particularly thanks to Dan Terrace, we consider ourselves the patriarch and matriarch of this, you can tell I'm attached to that word, of this center, having begun it. I'll never forget Dan walking into my office after we had put the proposal in for the the Ethics Center, and it's sat for a year. And Dan coming into my office and saying, "We got the money." I said, "We got what money?" He said, "We got the Ethics Center money." I said, "What did we say we were going to do?" And not realizing that 20 years later we'd be here at this party with you. So thank you all for a marvelous ride.
Thank you, Marcy. Marcy, if you could stay here for 1 sec. Cindy and David, can you come up, please? I just want to conclude by I've thanked our whole community. I just want to conclude by really thanking not only Marcy, but our whole center staff. Together, our team and Barbara Strauss, who I think is not here this evening, right? Barbara's not here. Yeah. Together, our team of 6 have, I think I calculated about 125 years of Brandeis University experience, not counting Barbara's 4 years as an undergraduate. So we've worked together, done a lot of amazing things, and I personally am grateful to all of you for your great work, for your comradeship and friendship, and for your spirit informed by so many people around us. Folks, thank you so much for coming. Enjoy the performance tonight in the Mandel Atrium starting in 15 minutes, and take a little bit of food on your way. Thanks for helping us celebrate 20 years.